Group 4 team members welcome you to the second week of our MLWeb model. On how to design a blueprint, we wish you an amazing and valuable journey. Excuse me, I have to take this call.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Reem. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. What about you, Marmar?
I'm doing well.
Excellent. Tell me, what's up?
Reem, you know our colleague, Dr. Ali?
Yes, I remember him.
He has a task to prepare a test blueprint. Actually, Dr. Shireen has explained for him in the past week the definition and the different types of the blueprint, but he's still stuck in the detailed process. Can we help him, Reem?
Yes, sure. How lucky you are. You know, I'm preparing to start a session on blueprint assessment. Do you mind if you join us?
Wow, of course not. I'd love to do that.
Okay, then welcome to our class. So sorry, guys, for any inconvenience. Our colleagues, Dr. Marmar and Dr. Ali, will join us. We will all together, at the end of this session, will be able to clarify the steps of blueprint construction, conclude the benefits of the blueprint, and create master and test blueprints. We'll start with the construction of master blueprint. To construct a master blueprint, you need to go through 5 steps. The first step is to determine the learning objectives to be assessed within the curriculum. The curricular content can be listed in many ways according to the curricular setting. The content may be presented in form of learning objectives or topics. These topics can be lectures or practical sessions. You will create a table, as you can see here in the slide, and in the first column, you will determine the course objectives. In the second step, you will go and determine the teaching methods and the instructional time.
Please, Reem, can you explain more how can I determine the instructional time for each learning objective?
Okay, first let us start with the teaching method, then we will talk about the instructional time to be more clear. The teaching method can be theoretical sessions in form of lectures, small group sessions, or flipped classrooms, or practical in the form of practical or clinical or field of training. The instructional time will be calculated by calculating the teaching units and in very simple equation. 1 hour of lecturing is equal to 1 unit teaching session. 2 hours of practical sessions, small group sessions, or flipped classrooms are equal to 1 unit teaching sessions. 3 hours of clinical training also are equal to 1 unit teaching session. And finally, 4 hours of field training are equal to 1 teaching sessions. And same, we will list them in the table below. And in the next step, we need to determine the impact and frequency of each objectives.
Excuse me, Reem.
Yes.
Can you illustrate how can we determine the impact and the frequency of a learning objective? Is it the same for the learning objective in both basic science and clinical medicine?
Actually, the impact of learning objectives is determined differently from the basic sciences and clinical medicine. Let us start with the impact. For example, the grading of impact of curricular content for basic sciences, and it's sometimes called phase 1, less important objectives related to basic science only will take 1 point. Important objectives integrated with concepts in other modules will take 2 points, and If it is very important objective relevant to clinical practice, will take 3 points. And if it is a clinical medicine, or sometimes it's called phase 2, then the grading of the impact of curricular content will be calculated. If the objective is not urgent, then it will take only 1 point. If it's related to the serious matter, then it will take 2 points. And if it's life-threatening related objectives, will take 3 points. And the decision will be left to the experts in the field. And next, we need to know how to calculate the frequency. Also, the frequency is same to the impact. The frequency of learning objectives determined differently from basic sciences and clinical sciences. Grading of a frequency of curricular content for basic sciences, if the learning objective is rarely applied in clinical practice, then we'll get 1 point, and 2 points if the learning objectives is commonly applied in clinical practice, and 3 points if it's frequently applied in the clinical practice. The grading of frequency of curricular content for clinical medicine, it will be calculated as follows. If the learning objective is related to rarely seen cases, then it will get 1 point, and 2 points if the learning objective is related to relatively common cases, and 3 points of the learning objective is related to a very common cases. And same as we mentioned before, it will be left to the expert in the field to take the decision.
So now I have a question, Reem. Why are we measuring the impact and the frequency of each learning objective?
By measuring the impact and the frequency and determining the teaching units, we can calculate something called the weight of each objective. We will talk about it in details in the test blueprint. Now, let us go back to the learning objectives to identify the major cognitive domains using Bloom's taxonomy. In this stage, we need to classify the learning objectives to high cognitive objectives and low cognitive objectives. The low cognitive objectives include the remembering and understanding level of Bloom's taxonomy. Moving upwards will take us to the highest cognitive domains. The graph on the left will help us to determine the level of each action verb that we use in the learning objective. And now you can notice in the table, outline and describe related objectives are related to remembering and understanding level. Because of that, we mention them under low cognitive. And demonstration is under analysis level, which is related to high cognitive domain. And finally, we need to address a suitable tool for each learning objective. At this stage, it will be limited to either written theoretical exams, such as end of module or final exams, or it's practical exams like OSPE or OSCE.
Yeah.
Marmar, congratulations. We have done with the master blueprint. Is it clear?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Reem, for your valuable information and for your great support and help. But now, how we can build the test blueprint from the master blueprint?
Simply based on his exam. If it is theoretical or practical, he will extract the related objectives and build his blueprint using the same steps we used before. Marmar, let me tell you what. Can you take the lead and help Dr. Ali to start applying what we have explained to build his written test blueprint? Are you comfortable in doing this?
Yes, sure. Let me start.
Then the floor is yours.
Now, for the construction of a test blueprint, we have to go through 3 steps. The first one is to select the objectives that will be assessed in the exam, whether they are theoretical or practical, and select their corresponding teaching units or teaching hours. Second, we have to determine the weight of each learning objective, and finally, to determine their assessment formats. Let's go through the first step. This is the master blueprint that we have created with Dr. Reem. And we are going to select the learning objectives that will be assessed only in the theoretical exam. We are designing a written exam or a theoretical exam, so we will select only the first 3 objectives that have only theoretical teaching units, as we can see in this table. And we will take them to fill our final written test blueprint template. So in this column, we will list our theoretical learning objectives, and here we will list their corresponding theoretical teaching units. Next, in this step, we will calculate the weight of the learning objective. The weight of each learning objective is produced by multiplying 3 factors. The impact of the learning objective times the frequency of the learning objectives, and these 2 factors were explained during the preparation of the master blueprint, and finally times the teaching units of the learning objectives. Let's apply this to our written exam. After determination of the impact and the frequency, as we have explained, we will multiply these 3 factors together. Let's take an example. For the first learning objective, we will multiply 5 times 3 times 1, so we will get 15. 15 is the weight of this first learning objective, and the same process will be repeated with the other learning objectives. After calculation of the individual weight of each learning objective, we will add all of the weights together to get what is called the total weight. Total weight is the sum of the weights of all learning objectives. After calculation of the total weight, I'll go to calculate the relative weight of each individual learning objective. This relative weight is calculated by dividing the weight of each learning objective divided by the total weight for all learning objectives. For example, the first learning objective has a weight 15. 15 will be divided by 45, and we will get 0.33. This is the relative weight for the first learning objective. The same for the second and the third learning objective. Why I'm calculating this weight, total weight, and relative weight? By calculation of the relative weight, I can calculate the number of marks that will be specified for each learning objective. Number of marks that will be given for each learning objective in my written exam is calculated by multiplying this relative weight times the total marks of the exam. For example, if I have the total marks of my written exam 55, so I will multiply 0.33 times 55 to get 18 marks to be given for the first learning objective. The second learning objective and the third are the same. To calculate the number of marks that will represent these learning objectives in the written exam. Let's come to the third and the final step, which is the determination of the assessment formats. We have different assessment formats for the questions in the written exam. The questions may be constructed response questions, which are the different types of the essay questions, and selected response questions, which are different types of multiple choice questions, like the single best answer question and extended matching question. How can I know the suitable assessment format for each learning objective? Now we have to go back to the Bloom's taxonomy and the corresponding level of the Miller's pyramid. If the learning objective falls in the first two levels of Bloom's taxonomy, remembering and understanding, this means that it corresponds to the level of nose in Miller's pyramid. And so the suitable assessment formats will be single best answer question, modified essay question, or short answer question. And these all are called factual tests. If the learning objective falls in the levels of applying and analyzing, which is equivalent to the level of knows how, the same questions will be suitable, but they should be clinical-based questions, like the multiple choice questions, which have a context or a clinical-based stem, which are called vignette. And the highest levels of creation and evaluation, they correspond mainly to the highest levels of Miller's pyramid, and they are mainly assessed through practical exams, including different types of OSCE, OSPI, DOPS, and others. Now, in our final written exam blueprint template, let's review our learning objectives and select the corresponding suitable assessment formats for them. We have the verbs outline and describe. They fall in the level of remembering of Bloom's taxonomy and demonstrate at the level of analyzing. So all these learning objectives, it will be suitable to use the multiple choice questions and the different types of essay questions in the assessment formats of my exam. Regarding the distribution of marks between the two different types of the assessment formats, this is related mainly to your college policy.
Great job. You got the idea. Let us conclude the benefits of having a blueprint before the next surprise Dr. Amira prepared for us. A properly constructed blueprint ensures that questions are aligned with the learning objectives. The assessment is valid. Content, competencies, and tools for the assessments are rational and balanced. And finally, ensures that no questions are out of the syllabus.
I think blueprinting Reem reduces the two major threats to validity: the construct under representation and the construct irrelevant variance.
Yes, sure. Thank you for being with us. Now we'll continue with Dr. Amira, who will give us a practical example in how to apply what we have learned. Be ready for the amazing surprise by Dr. Amira. Thank you.
Thank you.